Good morning, everyone. My name is Ray Assis, and welcome to the web interview series of the Asia Pacific Mission for Migrants. With us right now is the manager of the Mission for Migrant Workers, who has been in existence serving migrant domestic workers here in Hong Kong since 1981. Let us welcome Cynthia Abdon-Tellez. Hello, Cynthia.
Thank you, Ray. Hello, how are you? Since the beginning, when the pandemic broke in, there was a lot of chaos in Hong Kong. And migrant domestic workers, like in any other countries, are the least attended to. Rights are being violated because even the very Labor Department of Hong Kong has announced encouraging employers not to let their domestic workers out during their days off. That's a violation of their rights. It is presuming that migrant domestic workers do not know what to do when they're outside, do not know how to prevent being infected and all that. But record shows that when the first domestic workers, migrant domestic workers who were tested positive, they got it from either their employers or guests of their employers who came from travel outside of Hong Kong. And this is very alarming in the sense that there were also those who were not provided with masks and other sanitizers and whatever precautionary measures they should have. So up to this moment, we get cases of domestic workers who have not been allowed out even during their days off for months, 4, 5, 6 months. And that is unacceptable. So yeah, so what the migrant domestic workers themselves do is try to reach out to those that they know could help them. Otherwise, they just carry on with their lives. Or other domestic workers who are trying to reach out to their friends, knowing that within their neighborhood there are those who are being not treated well, then they reach out to them as well and connect them with us. I think because of the chaotic situation, they are encouraging everyone to stay home, work from home. And that is not possible for some of the types of work that is going on, or are, especially for migrant domestic workers, staying home is also their duty to be at home and in the houses that they are living, and these are their place of work. And that place of work becomes more demanding in the sense that those members of the household that usually goes out for work outside the house would be stuck in the houses. Students and children are stuck in the house, and more demands for cooking, more demands for cleaning. Sometimes they said that I am cleaning one part of the house, but one person is there and drives me out and doesn't want to have somebody else with her there. And then I go to another place, but also to clean that place. And somebody else is there, and I don't want to see you there. So where does she go? And one of the but acute problem in Hong Kong is the space, of course. More so with migrant domestic workers who are not provided proper accommodation. We had a research in the past 2, 3 years, and the situation of accommodation is really, really serious. And so in this time of pandemic, you could imagine how a domestic worker who says, they go out even on a Sunday, and it's supposed to be my day off, but I am not allowed to go. And I am being watched. And I could not also rest because my quote unquote resting place is a stock room. And when I say I'm being watched, the one elderly would be with me, and that elderly would be sleeping in my stock room, and that she doesn't want me to be there. So where do I go? I stand around, I sit on the sofa, if I am at all allowed to do so. It's very difficult, and it's causing them a lot of mental stress as well. Now, the government of Hong Kong came out with a first asking the employers of domestic workers to encourage them not to go out, and that was criticized a lot. And then they're trying to do kind of arrangements in the visa. At the onset, people were so happy. People, when I say people, but migrant domestic workers are so happy. Oh, okay, they're giving us consideration. Actually, in the main rules, in the directive that they gave out, the immigration department is actually giving these leeways, these adjustments for the benefit of the employers, not at all mentioning the benefits of domestic workers. For example, they are stuck in the Philippines because they had uh, a vacation or they're in between contracts. Employers are allowed to, okay, can we have an extension of this one with me yet? You know, when they're just to make it clear, employers whose domestic workers contracts are to be expired and they have already applied for another domestic worker who's back in the Philippines, in Indonesia, or elsewhere. But there is a problem with flights. And so this new domestic worker cannot come back or cannot come to Hong Kong immediately. What happens to their current domestic workers is that employers could request immigration to extend that contract, at least for a month or for 3 months at the most. And that is not a positive thing at all for some of the domestic workers who really wishes to live this employment. But for some, okay, they're very thankful because, okay, I still have 3 months job. But that is not for them. That is basically for the employers. There are a number of, for example, quarantine, for the policy for quarantine. Employers are required to make sure that you take care of your workers during the quarantine period. Upon arrival, there should be a 14-day quarantine, should not be leaving your house. Or you can check them in hostels or hotels, but you'll have to provide them with food. No? But it's not very clear when it comes to other rights. When a domestic worker, for example, from the Philippines or from Indonesia, leaves her country because the employer requires her to be in Hong Kong immediately, that person's contract starts. That is why when they arrive Hong Kong, employer is required to pay her traveling and food allowance. And therefore, her contract starts on the day that she arrives. But whether or not they should pay the 14-day quarantine is not clear with the government. But we insist, as a migrant serving institution, we insist that they should be paid the 14 days quarantine because it's a government requirement. And together with that, it's for the government to also assist even employers who cannot afford anymore. You know? So yeah, that is what the government is trying to do, try to assist employers who are in difficult situations during COVID-19. There has been a set of policies that we tried to arrange as an adjustment with the mission. We cannot stop, so we had to continue. One is that we called on good-hearted people to donate masks and sanitizers and other precautionary gadgets, measures that we need to be able to distribute to those who call us because they don't have masks. Either employers do not provide them, or because employers would like to provide them, but the prices of masks really shoot up, and other sanitizers. So we called on all over the world. In fact, Indonesia, one ambassadors for migrant workers in Indonesia really donated thousands of masks, and we were able to respond to the needs of migrant domestic workers. But that is not all. We had to activate our hotline for those who cannot reach us. So we spread the number around so that those uh, who cannot be reached can also be reached through another person, a third person. We try to do that. In the center, we minimize the number of people coming in, but we also attend to those who are queuing up outside the center. So we have migrant caring centers. What are these? These are outreach services that we provide in cooperation with organizations in certain areas, like for example, in Central, in Causeway Bay, in Mayfu, in Simsatsu, up to the new territories. We connect because we have a strong relationship with migrant domestic workers organizations. So through them, we train what you call welfare officers. Mm? There are one, two, or three of them can be trained into becoming a welfare officer, doing what initially we're doing at the center. And if they're stuck, they can call us. What they're doing in those centers during their days off, they set it up in places that is frequented by migrant domestic workers, and they provide these services. We also distribute masks to them so that they have something to distribute to the workers. We maintain social distancing. So not only in the center, but also in the migrant centers outreach program. So those, and then of course we try to do advocacy with the government. Recently, we came up with a position paper demanding the government that it has to take this responsibility because this is a pandemic. It's not an individual responsibility alone. So the government has to take responsibility for both employers and employees, not only for employers, but also for domestic workers. When recently, about 3-4 weeks ago, a group of recruitment agencies or placement agencies in Hong Kong came together. They said this is their union that is calling for the government to provide migrant domestic workers with a place for quarantine in rural areas, a camp in rural areas. The act of encouraging the government, calling on the government to do its responsibility, to have a center for those who are in quarantine is acceptable. But to separate domestic workers from other incoming individuals who are supposed to be the responsibility of the government should not be separated. But anyhow, at least we're one in that sense. And then secondly, of course, we say that medical attention, medical support should be provided by the Hong Kong government. They also should assist employers who encounter difficulties, especially if some of them lost their jobs also, or their salaries decreased. And so we say in that sense, 3 quarantine facilities in the maximum should be considered. And then of course, another requirement that we think the government should be responsible for should be an emergency and inquiry facility or assistance at the airport itself. If employers do not want to take them in and they do not know where to go, they should be able to connect with whoever they want to connect with, or they should have some hotline numbers there. No? And then apart from the Hong Kong government, should also be a responsibility of the migrant sending countries, the consular officials of the migrant sending countries based in Hong Kong. They should also be responsible in making sure or negotiating with the government the proper attention that should be given are migrant domestic workers. Yeah. And then they should be following them up. Some of the consulates are doing that, some don't maybe, but we say that it has to be their responsibility as well.
Thank you very much, Cynthia.
Thank you, Ray. May I take this opportunity to say thank you to those who assisted migrant domestic workers, local people, non-local people, Filipinos as well, and other migrant domestic workers groups. Thank you very much, Ray. Thank you for APMM.